It's basically translating your work such that if I can't in some way or the other experience, hold, or utilize your research in some way, then I don't think you've created enough impact as an end user. So that's my thinking about what impact truly means. It means real world outcomes.
Hello and welcome to the Pathway to Impact podcast series. My name is Madeline Arkins, Research Project Officer at UIN and your host for today. In this episode, we explore how research can drive real-world change with Dr. Avni Misra, a lecturer and researcher at RMIT University's College of Business, who is passionate about making research outcomes beneficial to society. Dr. Misra shares her journey from lab science to innovation management and introduces a 5-stage approach that moves research beyond academia and into actionable outcomes. Whether you're new to research or a seasoned pro, this episode will inspire you to think about how your work can truly make a difference. I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Avni Misra on this very topic. Dr. Avni Misra is a researcher and lecturer at RMIT University's College of Business with expertise in innovation management, particularly digitalized innovation, business networks, and industrial marketing. In addition to her work in innovation, she explores the role of gender in organizational decision-making and leads several projects focused in the gender equality space. Avni also teaches and coordinates courses in product innovation and B2B marketing with a PhD in innovation and industrial marketing from RMIT and 2 master's degrees, one in business marketing and one in biotechnology. She brings a wealth of knowledge to both her research and teaching, and hoping we can get more into that in our chat today. Avni, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Madeline. It's a very good introduction. I usually don't introduce myself that much.
I'm glad I could do it. For any of our attendees who were able to attend our conference in Madrid this year, you may also recognize Avni from a workshop she led on our last day. But maybe let's get started. And for the uninitiated, Avni, you have a really extensive academic background, it seems. How did your education journey lead you to the focus on innovation management and also impact in gender equality?
Oh, okay. So yes, I actually started with a career in STEM. So I did my bachelor's in life sciences and I did a master's in biotechnology. Then I worked in forensics for some time. And the more I worked there, the more I realized that I'm not a very lab-oriented person, with all due respect to everyone who works in labs for long hours. But I always wanted to see the more practical side of like doing and action-oriented work. And so I just shifted my focus from there to marketing, and then the flow happened such that I actually ended up working in marketing in India and California for some time. And then I just realized that I need to formalize this a bit more, and I'm more interested in research in that space. So I came to Australia and I did my master's and another master's, and then it wrote me in for a PhD. And that's how the journey of innovation management and everything started, because it always fascinated me how things happen in the space. How do these products come to market? How do people connect with each other to take things from a company or a lab to market and to selling and to end users? And in the course of this journey, I worked with many brilliant academics from across the globe, and one of them happens to be Professor Anne-Laure Manchon. She's leading many projects, but one of the things that she led was the Open Innovation Project, which was funded by a European Union Horizon 2020 grant. And as a part of that, there was a big team of people with whom we developed this toolkit for impact, because we realized that while there are great researchers and there's lots of academic work happening, and she's at the intersection of industry and academia, so it was her direction and ideology that we converted into a toolkit, which then pushed my interest in impact, actually. And there were also certain personal reasons during COVID. I'm from India and I lost 3 family members to COVID. And it was kind of like that, one of those real life incidents that kind of pushes you to think, what am I doing with my life? And I realized that there's not much that I can contribute from being like a medical doctor or being this or being that. What I have is a research skill. So how can I contribute to the society with that research skill that can be helpful for a lot of people? And that's how my impact journey started, and I became very passionate about it. I just want to take this as more a spreading awareness, that I want researchers and industry people to think about the society first and then think about the work and the skills that they're going to develop, because ultimately if it cannot translate, it's not going to be very useful. It's not going to get the full return of what's been invested. That's just, again, my opinion regarding that.
It can tell that you're very passionate while you're speaking about it, which is lovely to hear. And I think that whole aspect of action-oriented work and doing more than trying to think what the opposite of undoing is precisely what we're here to talk about today. Maybe to talk more about impact. Impact is a word that is thrown around a lot, sometimes to little effect. It seems almost like a buzzword. Can you explain what societal impact means in the context of research, and maybe why we're seeing it being really more advocated for in recent years?
That's actually a very good question, Madeline. I would like to give a little bit of context here. So as I said, that when we developed the tool, we developed it as a stage process. And I think we're going to talk about the process later. But in that process, the first thing we did was we were running these pilot workshops with people, trying to understand and explain them what impact is. And the first thing that came back to us after the first workshop was that a lot of people do not truly understand the meaning of societal impact. In fact, in academia sometimes, or even in the industry, the narrative was more about self-promotion rather than societal impact. So it was more about, oh, are you talking to me about talking about my research on YouTube? Are you talking to me about about my research beyond a publication of a paper? Essentially, yes, that's the mid step to societal impact. But societal impact in itself means outcomes of your work that can benefit the society, that can deal with the grand challenges that are there in the society: climate, environment, sustainability, poverty, challenges that can address some of the SDGs or the goals listed by United Nations, challenges that can benefit at different levels: individual people, communities, states, countries. So it's basically translating your work such that this is my personal definition, that if I can't in some way or the other experience, hold, or utilize your research in some way, then I don't think you've created enough impact as an end user. So that's my thinking about what impact truly means. It means real world outcomes. And it's a very interesting definition, which is divided into two key areas. One is research related outputs that create impact, and one is research related outcomes that create impact. Outputs are more documented pieces of work, such as a webinar would be an output. I'm doing this podcast right now, it's an output. An outcome would be that if someone listens to this podcast, connects with me, gets those canvases in action, creates a project, works on it, and delivers something to the society that then solves a very big problem like poverty or education or something. That would be the real outcome of this particular research. So that is what societal impact truly means.
It's interesting that you say that sometimes it can be conflated at first with kind of self-promotion, because I've never heard it said in such concrete words before, but that is, I think, what some people, and maybe that's also a reason why researchers who typically like to work in isolation are, offended is not the word, but unwilling to engage in that if it's perceived that way. What I might want to ask is more about these canvases and toolkits that came out of the project, and also that you work a lot with in your own work. Can you describe them a little bit more, and what are also some of the kind of key indicators or metrics that researchers can use to evaluate their impact? We also talk about impact sometimes being quite intangible. You talk about outputs versus outcomes. Do you have any more to say on the evaluation?
The toolkits are actually, it's a very simple approach. The way they originated was that we were trying to figure out, and that was after many iterations and many conversations with brilliant people who worked on the project. And if I could name a few, like there was Massimo Mishnelli, that time working with RMIT Europe. We have Ilya, former Taja project manager. We have Kerry O'Connor, another project coordinator. Katerina Krinishka, who's from LUT, and Ahmed Al-Assar, who's now working in another university in Norway. So all of these people, we all sort of like worked together with many other researchers. In fact, the list is so long, everybody who was associated with Open and Train project. And then we developed this process. And I looked at one of the canvases that was done by Strategizer, the very famous value proposition canvas and the business canvas. And I found that approach to be very simplistic. How simply can you make someone do something from theory to action? And I thought, what if we could convert impact thinking into that kind of an approach? And that's how actually the canvases came into action. So the canvases start with identification of emerging contexts. So basically taking a very marketing approach where you identify the market first, and then you think about the project or the product or the service. So basically, if you're an academic or an industry person trying to start a project within the sphere of your institution or your company, the first thing would be to look at what are the problems in the market? Where is it that my expertise aligns with what's going on? And then we try and find that mid ground through various external factors, addressing the internal situations, addressing competitive factors, and then coming down to one key problem. And how, as a researcher, and you can actually implement that from, usually what we do is we put people in groups of different disciplines. So a STEM researcher working with a social science researcher working with an engineer, various aspects in STEM, and then asking them to find a mid ground, find where you can coincide with each other in terms of your work and your skills, and then come up with a problem that can be viewed from different perspectives, but is solving the same issue that all of you are worried about. And that's how we identify the context in which they want to work. So it's a very multidisciplinary cross-collaboration approach. The next step is all about mapping a rough project. What is it that we build here? What is it that what resources I would need, what budget I would need? So it's like a little bit of a project management approach there. The next part is the engagement canvas, where we talk about, okay, I know the project now, I know the specifications. Who would be interested in this? Who can I collaborate with? Who can I partner with? Who can I get on board? Who would be the end user for this? And how am I supposed to map the journey all the way from where I am to the end user, and who's going to be involved in between? So all the stakeholders that I can possibly think of, whether it's people from the industry, government, academia, collaborations, companies, managers. And the last one, and I think that's the most important and the most nuanced version of any impact approach that is available, is that we developed a tracking canvas. A tracking canvas is a canvas that then helps you in mapping your engagement in the metrics that are very, very important. So once you know the metrics, and it is very difficult to map digital outcomes, the real world impact. It's very hard to measure. There are certain metrics in place and certain people are still figuring out because the solutions are so many. So for measuring outputs, you have lots of metrics, but for measuring outcomes, you don't have that many. So what we did was we converted that tracking part into a canvas where people can think about a strategy for how to put metrics with the engagement plan, and then back to the project, and then all the way back to the context. So, all of these are linked, they're interdependent. And then finally, you have your kind of like your strategic map ready for an impact-oriented and impact-worthy project that can then lead to various impact outcomes. So that's the 5-stage process.
Wow, it's really comprehensive and so outward looking from the outset, which I think is how these things have to go to entirely flip the switch on involving identifying the market first, most definitely. Do you have any examples you could share, Avni, of from your own research where maybe you've applied this 5-stage process or seen it work with and be successful?
I don't usually lead research projects as such. I usually actually work in collaboration with, let's say, big researchers. But whatever projects I put my hand in now are all impact related. I personally have made this decision that I will not choose projects that do not have any impact to the society, no matter how financially wonderful they are, because at the end, I want that satisfaction of that I need to give back some way. And some of the projects, and one very interesting, and Open in a Train in itself is an exemplary project. Exemplary is an understatement. I wish I had more words to define that. It's an exemplary project that we ran 5 summer schools across multiple countries with people joining us from different universities across the globe, United States, Africa, every continent pretty much that could possibly reach. And it is a 5-day approach. And in that itself, the output was, for me, it was highly unexpected because each one of those participants, when they went back, they have used those canvases to design their projects. They have used that approach. Their thinking has evolved. And while I was training them and while the team members who were engaged with all the different lectures that they had developed and the material that was delivered, I think each one of us had put so much effort in building the mindset. So we didn't focus on the output as much. The summer school was more focused on, okay, we're going to give you the tools and we're going to change your mindset. And then you go back and see how you can implement. And that has happened. We have testimonials, feedbacks from people coming saying, the way after attending a summer school, the way I've thought about research, the way I've thought about societal impact is completely evolved for me. And people are emotional about it, which is a great thing. When people attach emotions to a theory, I think it has made a difference in some way. Another project that I am working on with another researcher from RMIT Australia, it's led by Dr. Marion Makar, is about the Australian lifeblood. It's about donation of blood. Why Gen Z is not donating blood in Australia, what's happening. So to me, that kind of a project will bring real output. We are creating knowledge that might be useful for a government research institution to then actually find out what's happening in the state of public welfare where it's related to blood donation. So there, I don't think we needed the canvas at that point in time. There, the societal impact mindset that we have in RMIT itself, which is a very big push, because I don't know if you guys have seen, RMIT stands 5th in the world in terms of societal impact related research. And our mindset, our culture is such that everyone thinks about research in the same way. I'm also working with another researcher, Assistant Professor Bernardo Figueiredo in RMIT Australia, whose work is on ageism and digitalization, like how to connect seniors and older people with digital education and literacy, and how he's been able to give these really extensive, comprehensive tools that seniors are finding super easy now. Okay, I can use that book and toolkit to teach my grandparents how to use the internet. How can they interact with the computer? And that is really important in today's world. And that's going to lead to a lot of awareness in many different ways. So those are the kind of projects that I think I'm not particularly a lead, but I am so happy to be associated in whatever way it is, facilitating workshops, designing toolkits, working on data analysis. Some way or the other, it contributes to the society. And the good part is that you don't have to deviate from your regular passion. If you're a researcher, let's say I'm a qualitative researcher, I don't have to deviate from it. I don't have to be any different. I can still publish. I can still meet the requirements of the university. I can still teach. I can still do all the other things, and yet be a researcher that can still contribute to the society. And I think that's what research truly should stand for.
It sounds like it is very gratifying to see the journey and the mindset shift in the people that you get to engage with. Yeah. And I think it's also important to share these stories of how researchers can have their cake and eat it too, in terms of still doing what they love, but also producing those kind of outcomes and impact. I noted also that Lifeblood project I'm very interested in. There was a similar, not similar, but there was a project in Rotterdam where I'm based that involved interviewing people and seeing if they would donate their data to hospitals, because obviously the data that is collected by hospitals is overwhelmingly of people who are sick, and trying to flip the switch on that. And fascinating. One for later. I see a question in the chat, Avni, that I might put to you. This is from Katrina. She asks, Avni, what do you think about the idea that assessing researchers on their impact is a little unfair? Wouldn't it be better to measure and assess the actions that they take towards adoption, given that ultimately impact is out of their control? That's an interesting one. What's your take, Avni?
Look, this is quite a controversial discussion, I'd say. And I should say this as a disclaimer that I'm not representing any university when I'm making this opinion. But in my opinion, I think the reason why I think that assessment should be a criteria for researchers is to push is to give them that push. It's not to doubt anyone's ability. It's not to counter anyone's capacity of giving outputs. Yes, it should not be enforced. It's an absolutely personal choice. I can do research that can have societal benefit, and I can do research that does not have to have societal benefits, but it's still a good research. It's still useful. It's still publishable. It still gets you the merit and everything. And that's absolutely fine. But I think that the reason I think these frameworks are important now is because we should look around us. We're dealing with actually a lot of issues at the moment. And there, in every nook and corner, you can find a challenge that has to be dealt with. Not for us, maybe for future generations. I don't know. But realistically, these are more like, I see them as drivers. To bring that change, some people will get affected. Change never happens with absolute agreement and absolute everyone getting everything. It always comes with few people not getting what they wanted, few people not being part of that journey or not being associated with that transition. But that is how, unfortunately, change happens. So in my opinion, I think that having those criterias to assess researchers, while they can be assessed on other criteria, it's still a good thing because it will push us to do research that'll be meaningful in that area. Having said that, doesn't mean that those who are not doing those other research projects, that's not meaningful. All I mean is in the societal context, that would have a lot of benefit. And as a researcher, if you're spending so many years researching a particular topic or months of your time, it would be a good thing, right? If you can kill two birds with the same stone. You're doing great research, you're being acknowledged for it, at the same time, someone else is getting a benefit out of it. It's a win situation. So
Yeah.
that's what I think. Yeah, but it's not going to be, it should not, I do agree that it should not be super fast. It should not be like imposed, like right here, right now approach. It will take time. It's a gradual process. Like changing that mindset wouldn't happen. Several generations will have to be embedded into this mindset to then think, and then assessing them might probably be a fair approach. I do agree that it's not fair to assess researchers right now on impact because the mindset is still building. It's not there yet.
Absolutely. I think also this is what cultural change is. I think if it's implemented hard and fast, then you're not really, like you said, change doesn't happen with absolute agreement, but also if it happens without consideration of the people involved, it will be seen as a lot more dictatorial, I think, than the actual intention of this kind of change is, which is to drive impact. Avni, I think we have time for one more question, and maybe just to bring us full circle, what would you say, what kind of advice would you give to maybe some early career researchers who want to design their projects with long-term societal impact from the outset, or how to keep in mind?
I think two pieces that I always tell is, first of all, I think everyone should do research within an area that they are passionate about. And there are ways of connecting and aligning that with what your institution requires you to do. It's not always the most straightforward pathway, but there are ways of molding it. So maybe keep an eye out for like how you can align that. And secondly, for social impact, I'd always give this one advice. You don't have to wait for something to finish to then think about social impact. It's never after I publish this paper, after I collect this data, after I start with it. And it can start, the beauty of social impact is the beauty of a framework, at least for I know that the one we've designed at Open in a Train is you can start anywhere. You can start when you're about to finish your PhD. You can start when you're starting a research project. You can start when you've reached the mid of your research project or your any project for that matter. There is no starting and ending point with impact, and be patient. Long-term impact is not going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. It takes a long time for impact to be visible. But I do believe that gradually you will see it happening, and how great it would be to be a part of such a change. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Absolutely. I don't know about everyone else, but it is just turned 7:30 a.m. in Amsterdam, the Netherlands here, and I am feeling energized about that, the power of now, which I think you can apply to most things in life. Act now. It's also important to remind people that there is no point past the point of no return where you can't change your mindset and change how you approach research. Avni, thanks so much for joining us. This, as always with the fireside chats, I feel like we only skim the surface of a topic in 30 minutes, but this was really interesting for me, at least. And a quick plug for our next year's conference, we're already thinking of it, is in next June, 10 to the 12th of June in our lovely Amsterdam, and the call for abstracts has just opened. So please submit, please check it out. Avni, if people are interested in your work, where can they find you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can just search for my name and then just add PhD to it, because that's how I've differentiated myself. Sorry, that's me being from a marketing background. You can just connect with me there. I'm so happy to always talk to people about impact. If at any point anybody needs help in strategizing for impact, feel free to just raise a question. I'd be happy to help. But yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so
Great.
much, Madeline. It's been a great conversation, and thank you, Pun, for organizing all of this.
Omnipotent pun to the people who can't see the woman behind the curtain. All right, Avni, thanks so much. Enjoyed the rest of your evening, and thank you everyone for joining. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the discussion. Follow UIN on LinkedIn, and if you're enjoying our podcasts, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice to help others find this content too.